have a serious topic today. I think it's serious. I believe it's serious because women, we need to focus on what's going on. So we are going to take a look at a plan that says it wants to strengthen families and reverse declining birth rates. But when you actually break it down, much of the focus isn't on lowering the cost of raising a child. It's on defining what a family should look like and the roles within that family. The report explicitly links women's education, career paths, independence to declining birth rates. It's always our fault for some reason. And that raises a real concern about whether the solution being proposed is support or limitation or flat out oppression. Because if families today are struggling with childcare and housing and healthcare, can we really say that we're supporting them if we're not addressing those realities at all?
Nope.
Because supporting families isn't about turning back the clock. It's about making it possible to build a life in a world that we live in now. And we're going to talk a little bit about that nostalgia that these men seem to have for the 1950s. And as a media scholar, we're going to talk about that a little bit because what was on TV was not reality. We'll talk about that.
Oh, no, far from it.
So very far from it. So I'll kind of put on my media hat when we get to that point. We have about Velshi laid this out in an MS Now segment that I thought was very good. And what I'm going to do is play pieces of that throughout the live today and talk about different aspects of it, as well as go to the report itself, because the report itself is very telling. And the charts they have in there are very telling. And again, we'll talk more about that. But is this what they want? Is this what they're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So taking women back to a time. Oh my God, how many years did we fight for the right to vote, the right to have independence, to right to work, the right to have our own credit card in our name, the right, all these rights for independence. And it's now men and some women going along with it, obviously, want to take those rights away.
A lot of Christian groups, I hate to say it, but I even grew up. That looked like something that could have been pulled from the magazines that I grew up on. It's this holistic, the woman, the mother, and with the buildings in the back and the laptop and the child.
Yeah. I did a bit of a deep dive on this with like the Heritage Foundation combined with the MS Now video you're going to show. And the thing I found ironic about the women that are in leadership on like the Heritage Foundation, they look like they're in charge of groups that like care about family and care about kids, and like it's all kind of this facade, because then when you go and research those groups that they're a part of, it's all just propaganda again, because people in the United States are now so used to not just they'll read a title and be like, oh, it must be true, rather than go into details.
And that's why I thought it was important to go into those details. So there's going to be some education for all of us in this, and for myself, because I wanted to see what was actually in the report versus what are the sound bites that we always hear. So let's play the first couple minutes or so of Velshi, and then we'll come out. I want to show a little bit of the report. We'll kind of talk about where they're heading with all of this. Is it for me?
I'm sorry.
People must know to call me then.
They call you just so they can hear their call coming across. All right, let's listen.
2025 actually never went away. If you thought that the Heritage Foundation.
Oh, hello.
The group behind the radical governing blueprint known as Project 2025 was finished dismantling American democracy? Think again. Now they're turning their sights even more keenly on America's women. The same movement that drafted a plan to remake and undo much of the federal government has now unveiled a chilling new manifesto, one that is aimed at making it harder for women to work, harder for them to live independently, and easier to push them back into financial dependence on husbands or fathers. This is not hyperbole, in the same way that Project 2025 wasn't hyperbole, though plenty of critics dismissed it as such, especially as Trump himself disingenuously disavowed it. 1 year into Trump's second term, groups tracking his administration say that roughly half of Project 2025 has already been implemented. That includes dismantling federal diversity and inclusion programs, dramatically expanding immigration enforcement, rolling back environmental protections, eliminating federal funding for public broadcasters like NPR and PBS, and so much more. That blueprint also called for authorizing military troops to help seal the border, removing immigration enforcement protections from places like schools and churches, and dramatically expanding immigration detention facilities. If there's one lesson to take from all of this, it's this. Do not underestimate the determination of this movement or its hostility toward liberal values and the expansion of democratic rights for groups that they see as outsiders. And they see women as outsiders.
Okay. So we're going to come back to that. Why do they see us as outsiders, for heaven's sakes? Why are they afraid of us?
Because they're
Psychosis.
They're
Expand, Anitra.
It does. I don't understand it. I really don't know. I usually have an answer, but I just don't know why they would see us as outsiders. I think they see us as less than, and throughout history, we have been less than. But it's just like, well, we're just going to put them back where they're going to be, and you're not just moving us around. We're not pieces on a board, and we have depth and breadth, and and we do different things. So make it so that we can do what we do and still survive it, like you said, in this day and age, not 1950, 60, 70 standards, because it's not going to work.
Yeah, and keep in mind that women are the majority, actually, especially in the United States. There are more women than men. And that's the reason why they really want to have that baby boom, is because of the fact that, women are not having babies as much, or frequent, not settling down or having babies later in life and everything. But they're really scared that men will be extinct eventually because, women are not producing them as much as they want.
and
Plus, they got to have kids to steal,
Yeah.
so that they can get them for the islands.
Oh God.
I believe that anyone who opposes their ideology, they look at as an outsider. So it wouldn't matter who you were. It's, it doesn't have to be a specific minority group, doesn't have to be specifically women. I think it's just anyone who opposes their ideology.
And if you watched Don's show today, he had a poll up from CNN that everybody who is in the MAGA movement, not Republicans, in the MAGA movement, 100% approves of Donald Trump and this administration. And that is scary.
Did you know the Nazis and Hitler created Aryan children? They took girls that were Aryan look, had long blonde hair or blonde hair, and had them have babies to have what they considered a perfect civilization.
Eugenics.
I bring this up because it's really scary, isn't it? Because that's where it feels like our country is going right now. I know that would happen. No,
check your comments. I want to go to the report.
Yeah, it's just beyond reality.
Well, I want to say this, Kim,
Yep.
is what I noticed is Donald Trump, they want to control women. And what he said was a lot of us are on programs that help us, whether it be food stamps or SNAP programs or whatever kind of government program assistance. And he think the solution is going back into the home with men, but they forgot that the reason we wanted to get out of these homes is because these men were either abusive or drunks or lazy. And so we wanted a better life, and they don't want us to have a better life, is how I see it.
Yeah, I agree. Like I was fortunate to grow up with a father that wanted girls and supported us 100%. He was our softball coach. He was our bowling coach. He defended us back and forth. And he, even back, I was born in the 1970s, and even back then, that was kind of really weird because most men wanted to have boys.
Well, I'm lucky too. My dad was a wonderful father to both girls and boys, and I'm realizing that both didn't occur for a lot of women in their homes. I also am from very strong women on my mother's side, incredibly strong. And so I didn't realize that. But now I really appreciate it at this point in my life when I see what other women have suffered over the years.
Yeah, great comments. My dad wanted a boy too. I could have been named Teddy Lou. Teddy.
Damn.
Are you kidding me? Really? For Theodora, because his name was.
Katie, you are correct in saying that these white men from that Pocahontas, but honestly, it's a lot of women that is supporting this BS.
Yeah, and that's that's scary when I was talking about looking at like the Heritage Foundation website and seeing all these women who are like they're so educated and qualified, but like if any of you have seen The Handmaid's Tale, either read the book or seen the show, one of the creators of that whole Gilead was a woman. And
correct.
in it, she then gets kicked out of everything because she's a woman, but she's like, wait, I helped create this. They're like, we don't care, you're still a woman. So it's just frustrating.
It's men taking their physical strength and trying to bully us. That what it boils down to. A lot of the women that are backing their husbands, that they're educated and everything. When it comes down to the end of the day, when they're in private and stuff, I hate to say it, but they're emotionally abused. They're mentally abused. They could be physically abused, but it really is how they've actually grown up and been treated along those lines. I think that has a big impact in their decisions.
Are you saying
can we go back? I'm sorry, Kim. Can we go back to Momo's comment, because I think that is spot on as well. She said they're scared of working under a woman. They can't handle that most women are more educated.
Yep.
And really, we are. We have we have graduate degrees. We have postgraduate degrees.
Yep.
All of that for the simple reason that in order for us to be taken seriously, we had to have alphabet soup after our names.
And think how much harder as women we had to work for those degrees to be taken seriously, even doing all of that.
Yes.
We went through the school of hard knocks.
Yes.
Yeah, really.
Yes.
Yeah. I will say it was two men that gave me the opportunity to get into management, though. And of course, there's a lot of good men out there, but it's hard. It was hard. Yeah.
Yes. And it still is. It's still is.
Absolutely still is. Yeah. And we could talk about that. I had someone I took over. I was managing data centers back then, and he says, it was an older man, I don't work for you. I work with you. And I said, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. I also write your performance reviews.
Yeah, right. I was going to say that was my hubby that said that, not me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's dig into the report too. We're going to go kind of back and forth, a little education, a little fact checking, and then back to Bell Chief. So what they're saying is this is saving America. Everything is saving America. The SAVE Act.
From what?
Saving
Yeah.
America by Saving the Family, a foundation for the next 250 years. To end America's family crisis, policymakers and civic leaders should treat restoring the family home as a matter of justice, driven by two truths. The first is that all children have the right to the affection and protection of the man and woman who created them. Agree? The second is that the ideal environment in which to exercise this right is in a loving and stable home with their married biological parents. In contrast, the default in American culture today is to put the desires of adults over the needs of children. Children are too often called to sacrifice what is due to them, the presence of their mom and dad under the same roof for entirety of their childhood. We're going to talk about that. The three key takeaways are: the family is the foundation of civilization and marriage. The committed union of one man and one woman is the cornerstone. It is the seedbed of self-government. We're going to talk about that. The question that will determine the course of America's future is: what happens to a nation when its citizens largely stop having children and eschew marriage? The only way for America to thrive in the future is to rebuild the family, which can only happen with societal commitment to revive the institution of marriage. I just want to talk about that for a second before we move on. How many of you, if anybody, and in the audience, were raised with parents who were abusive or who fought like cats and dogs? Who were in an environment that you had to cry and hide under a bed, or had to go to bed at night afraid, or any of those things? Is that the kind of environment that we want our kids to live in? It wasn't how I wanted to live. I was so grateful when my parents divorced when I was 8. What are your stories about that? I want to hear. We want to hear.
My parents did get divorced. I will say that people was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and I was like, "Don't be. Best thing ever happened to us." I don't mean to put all my business out here, but it was just there was ebbs and flows. It wasn't a constant everyday thing. There was some goodness in the middle of it, and that's what's so confusing about it all. But I know a lot of things didn't happen because of him being a man and being protected under the guise of being a man and the head of the household and a public figure.
So one of the reasons why I don't have children, I will soon be of the age where I will not be able to have children, even if I wanted to. And there's many reasons why I decided not to have children. But one of the things that scared me when I thought about it is, would I have a partner who would share the responsibility of raising a child equally? Because even though I grew up with two parents, I saw that the brunt of child rearing often fell on my mom and my stepmom. And that terrified me. Just the idea. And you see other people whose fathers left, started new families, or just disappeared. And I feared having that for myself. And I know that there are good men out there, like Maureen said, who share the responsibility of child rearing, but that terrified me that I could end up being on my own raising children, and I did not want to deal with that.
And going through all the things that go along with that co-parenting. And I did watch other people. I don't have any children either. I've helped raise a lot, but I don't have any of my own. And a lot of it's in that, some of it's biological, but they also need to concentrate on clean water and, like you said, health care and things like that. Not putting the toxic dumping in the ground so that people can have the baby, so they don't have all these different ailments that go along with our environment issues.
Well,
I grew up.
Go ahead, Marley.
I grew up in a family situation that was verbally abusive, physically abusive, and like Nietzsche said, it wasn't every day, but it was enough for me to, when I got older, to not want to have children. One, it's because it didn't fit the lifestyle that I wanted. And two, I didn't want to pass on that generational trauma as well. I also saw I never wanted to get married because I saw my mother get definitely verbally abused. Not let my father would hit her, but it was more like restraining, and cornering her, and financial abuse where she
Mhm.
had to beg for money for herself. And so you know, I agree that that children need to be raised in a very stable, nonviolent environment, something that supports them and doesn't traumatize them, where they carry that trauma throughout their life.
Seeing Trump as a father figure is enough to make you not want children.
Nah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I grew. The thing too is like, my parents fought and everything, and I thought it was like the worst thing in the world. But they weren't physically abusive, mentally abusive, or anything. Usually it was over money. My dad was a school teacher, and he raised 4 kids, and he was a great dad. My mom was a great mom. But when I got into my marriage, my girls, even to this day, they're 24 and 22, is like, wish you got divorced, because I got into really bad arguments with him. I was making the money. He was a stay-at-home dad. And I felt resentment a little bit, but I look at it now like we're in a great place. We stayed for our kids. Our kids are doing great. Um, I wish we could go back and change those mistakes, but at the end of the day, we both had this commitment of saying we had kids together. We're going to raise our kids together, and that's the bond we have. Like, and now we're great, we're friends and everything, but you know, it it is how strong you are as a person and how you can actually be able to co-parent that makes a difference, and I feel bad for my daughters who are like, oh, you guys should have got divorced, because we're all traumatized. But I'm like, okay, Alex, you got a full scholarship to UTD in Texas. You graduated college with minimal debt. Your sister went to Boston U, did the same thing. What did we do wrong? And you guys are living on your own in your early 20s.
Well, we're gonna talk about the economics part of this, because I think a lot of pressure that is put on families is economics. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but I also want to talk about this aspect, and let me put this back up. So right here, in many respects, a strong family dependent on God and one another is itself a declaration of independence. It advances the cause of liberty by minimizing the need for government in daily life. In the mortal words of John Adams, our Constitution was made only for the moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. I want to talk about this John Adams quote real quick, because we have to remember the time in which it was stated. So what Christian nationalists love to do with that quote is say, see, our country was built on the foundation of Christianity and religion and etc. John Adams did make that comment, but if the scholars in doing the research would interpret what he meant today, what he's saying is, because context really matters, that the Constitution depends on a population capable of self-restraint and ethical behavior. Otherwise, no system of laws alone can hold it together. So that's a bit of a different interpretation than what they are. And I'm curious, any historians or people who did a lot of research in that area, if you agree or disagree with that interpretation, and then we'll move on.
I'm just very tired of these white Christian nationalists treating everything that the founding fathers have said like gospel. Like, these were not perfect men by any means. And like they just seem to forget, about how George Washington and Thomas Jefferson owned slaves and plantations, and that this country was actually founded on religious freedom and not just being a Christian nation. And it's
You can't say Christian when you stole it. Let's start out there. Thou shalt not let steal. So you started out stealing.
Yeah. And it's just like I'm so tired of them just playing like word games with all of these quotes when they're not looking into the deeper context.
Well, Nietzsche, not just stealing, they were also killing.
Yes, absolutely. I was just naming the first one. Whole lot of other stuff. You know what D.L. Hughley said the other day on his show? He said, yeah, there were some good people. He said, I'm sure Thomas Jefferson loved Sally Heming, but he also owned her children. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I think if they really
And
cared about women, they would have created ways that we could have a path to whether we want to be married or single, that we'd have the time off at work and get the pay for being off of work, and having daycare centers, I think, that are open 24 hours that are oversaw by the government.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that because other countries are doing that successfully.
Yeah.
Very successfully. So we're going to talk about that. All right, let's listen to a little bit more as we move forward with this.